Here we go. All right, thanks for joining me. So just for those of you that are joining us for the very first time, my name's Matt Lockwood, and this is Worship Leader Conversations. Tonight, I am joined by my very good friend, Branon Dempsey, who I'm going to be bringing into the conversation very shortly. But before I do that, I just want to just share exactly what the whole point of these conversations are. I've been involved in worship team ministry for 30 years this year, in various different levels, various different kinds of churches, some small, some big. And there's so much that I've learned that has not just been through teaching videos or reading books, but has been through watching what other people do when they are leading their team. And I've realized that so much of how I've grown is by seeing other people do what they do, either good or bad. And I've learned and drawn lessons from that. And the reason why I'm doing these conversations is because I want to speak to other worship leaders and people who have been involved in leading teams, growing teams, in whatever level, in whatever kind of format, tradition, or anything like that. It's all the same in the end, because it's down to people. And hear their story and learn from them, from the challenges they faced and how they've overcome it, some of the successes they've had and what led to those successes, and all those kind of things. And for me to learn and for be able to share these videos out here on Instagram Live and also on YouTube as well, and Facebook, so that you as a leader can learn as well. You can draw some stuff. I think the incredible thing about hearing other people's stories is that even though one person hears a story and gets one thing out of it, another person will hear that same story and get something completely different out of it. And that's what's exciting about sharing stories and being able to share people's stories using this kind of medium to do so. So thank you everyone who's joining us online. It's really good to have you. Say hello down in the comments below. Let us know where you're watching from. Okay, so today with me is Branon Dempsey. I've known Branon for probably 3 or so years. I think we've known each other, haven't we? We've really only communicated in this way across the internet. Branon, tell you what, Branon, why don't you tell me all about yourself, what it is that you do, and particularly how we kind of came to meet. But just share as well the church that you're from and the team that you're from as well.
Yes, you bet. Hi, everybody. And Matt, thanks so much for having me here. It's a joy and honor to be here with all your followers and friends and our friends on Worship Team Training that are watching too. What's up?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I lead a ministry called worshipteamtraining.com and also Worship Team Training University, which is WTTU.co. And I've been doing this since 2006. I've been writing, I've been teaching, leading worship longer than that. And just like everybody else, you start out leading worship when the pastor asks you, after they find out that you play an instrument and sing, and they ask you to do the offering one Sunday, and then 5 Sundays later, you find yourself actually helping with the worship team, and then about a year later, you're actually on the team leading worship, and you're the guy. So it's really through not osmosis, because that's by water, right? But you kind of, I guess we can use that. That allegory that, we just kind of learn through swimming. You're just kind of thrown into the diving in, and you just have to go. So that's how I started. And I was born and raised in in the country here in Texas. My family and I were from Austin, Texas. We have 2 awesome boys and my lovely wife that we go back to high school together.
Wow.
And, so grew up not in a very Christian home, was quite broken rather. And I shared my story about that earlier this year, and I'm writing a book on it called Facing the Shadow. And
great.
Matt and I talked about that too. And it's a story of my abuse when I was 6 years old. And I'm very transparent about that and strong of that story, because I really believe that it doesn't define who you are, but God definitely does shape you through it. And I think the best part for me is learning the things that God has showed me with his grace and mercy through tragedy. And how does that have anything to do with leading worship? It has everything to do with leading worship, because when we lead, God, number one, when He's called us into being followers of Jesus, we ought to be authentic. We are to be authentic, and I really believe that when we're veneer, and if we're living a lie, it doesn't. God sees through it. Number one, and if we ever get called to a place of leading worship, that's the worst place that you want to be. So you really want to be tried and true, because God doesn't call the perfect and the qualified. He calls the unqualified in order to equip them, because when you're called, God uses your story in the way that you are. And so I've shared my story a lot just this past year. I'm very excited about it. The place that I serve right now, it's at Hope Chapel, that's in Austin, Texas. Okay. And we have 4 worship teams, and we're going to be rehearsing tonight. So everyone in Texas, we're slowly gathering back as a church. Yeah. And so that's, in a nutshell, that's everything.
Fantastic. That's it. And so how long have you been at Hope Church?
I've only been there for a few months.
Okay.
Yeah, so brand new, and meeting everybody, and maybe some of the worship team members are watching right now. So what's going on? And I'll see you later tonight. So
how are you finding that, settling into a team that has been going? I'm assuming here that it's been going a while before you arrived.
Oh yeah.
How are you finding that, setting into a team and establishing your role within that team?
Well, I think it's very interesting when we come into a new place of worship, or we come into a new place of team, if we're going to be leading or if we're going to be following. The way I establish myself, number one, is to learn what I can from the people and to learn who they are. It's not so much about me and what I can do, because honestly, it's really about who they are. And if I don't really speak the same language, if I don't, flow into the same kind of river, so to speak, then I'm just going to be battling an upstream type relationship. So it's better, like my first week that was there, I was asked to meet the pastor, meet the team, and just go slow. And that's all I did. I didn't even lead worship. I just spent time getting to know people. And I really believe that when you're, when you're in a new place, I think for a long time, we've kind of gotten this, perhaps not on the right foot, because we want to create culture. When you go to a new place, it's always about, well, what can I do now? And how can I change the setting? And how can I put my stamp on it, or my mark? And I found that over the years that it's the opposite. It's not about what you can do. It's really about the mark that's already there. And there's a reason why Proverbs says, do not move the ancient boundary stone. And what that means is that we're really the outsider coming in. And for us to change anything of what people are doing on the inside, really, we kind of deface the history, the faithfulness of God and what He's done through that church. And also really more about the members. And so it's really about learning, well, what can I do to collaborate? What can I do to join with? What can I do to help enhance what they're already doing? And I believe that when you begin that process and you move through that journey, then things begin to change on their own as a byproduct. And what's marvelous about it is that it's no longer yours, it's the whole entire church, and it's the whole entire team. And I think that's where a lot of worship leaders and leaders in the church may not be as successful, and they may find themselves in an early tenure of place of leadership, is because they failed to learn that. And I really believe that you go a lot longer and a lot further when you do things their way instead of yours.
Sure. That sounds good. That's great stuff. So does your team have a vision statement or a mission statement at all? And if so, what is it?
I'm so new that they have one, and I'm just learning it now.
You're still learning it.
I'm still learning it. So see, I'm learning as I go. There you go. That's pretty.
So let's go back maybe to your previous church then, before where you were leading that. Did you have a vision statement there?
We did.
What was the statement there?
The vision was to connect people to worship through the use of artistic gifts.
Cool. How did you come to that vision? What was the journey for that?
Well, music was a very it's a big essential in the church, and artistry, and there is also the quest of helping people understand what worship is. And so we together as a team, we coined that vision statement to introduce, okay, who are we? What has God given us that we're talented in? And then what is our vision that's fall in line with the church? And I really believe that when you create a vision mission statement for your worship ministry, it must intertwine with the church. So like our church was love God, love people, love Jesus. And so how can we fit that into our vision statement as a ministry? Because once you start going array and, like, so we use the word connecting, connecting people to God and connect people to worship. But once you start coming up with different vision statements that are opposite, it's almost like, another little ministry in itself inside the church. And you don't want to do that because it gives mixed signals to your people and also to your leadership.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's good stuff. So here we go. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you have faced whenever you've been a team leader? And what have you done to overcome those challenges?
Very good. Did you write all these questions down first?
I did, yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's right.
Okay. I did not write a thing down. Okay. So, so you definitely got me. I think the biggest challenge that I've had in ministry, which I think that this happens with everybody, are the difficulties in personalities and relationships among the team.
Yeah.
And we, as a default, I think, like to say, well, no, there is no drama on our team, and no, there is no problem, and we all get along great. I mean, I can't tell you the hundreds of worship teams that I've worked with over the years, and nearly every one of them have told me that. And very few of them would come out and say, well, you know what? We actually do have a problem getting along with each other. And here's why.
Yeah.
I think it takes a lot of guts to realize that, you know what, you're just like everybody else, and everybody's family. My family, at home, we all have different opinions. We all see things in a different way. We have likes and dislikes. We even voice our opinions of what we like and don't like. But what we don't do is, force others to see the opinions that we have and to get them to agree.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we find trouble in ministry, because we have already, there's no doubt, every one of us has different opinions and different ways of doing things. But I think where we start to get our feathers ruffled is when we start to believe that, well, they don't think like I do. Or you may put yourself down, and maybe the other way. Well, I don't do the things that they do. Maybe I'm not as worthy to be on the team. And you see all of that already right away is divisive. Yeah. Either something that we don't want to cause, but we do because maybe we feel a little bit more insecure or weaker, or maybe we may come across in another way that to our team members that may rub them the wrong way, and we don't realize it. But I think the personalities, the drama, the attitude, that seems to get in the way for a lot of things, and it goes across a lot of barriers. It happens within the your staff in the ministry. It happens in the senior staff of the church. It happens in the volunteers. And so one thing that I've learned and still learning through all my years is you have to let people be who they are. That's just simply it. There's not about, it's like when I married my wife, I don't ask her to change who she is. I don't force her to do things that I like to do. I don't disregard the things that she likes to do. I have to embrace who she is because that's who I'm marrying. Now, no, we don't marry the church, and no, you don't marry your ministry. But in the same sense, you can't change the people of who they are. But the one and only person that you can change is yourself. And I'll tell you what, our marriage has never been better because I've learned that very fact, and I'm still working on it and practicing it every day, that
Yeah.
I can't change my wife, but I can change me. What does that mean? That maybe I begin to look at different things the way that that I normally would. Maybe like for the ministry, maybe I learned to like a different set of music that these other guys like. Maybe I learned some new things that I wouldn't normally find myself doing. Maybe I'm wrong about something that I'm seeing, and maybe I just need to rethink whatever it is. But I really believe that when we begin to learn and become a student of our ministries, then that itself becomes the teacher
Yeah.
of all of us learning how to get along, and knowing that, you know, if like Matt, I mean, you know, you may like the color blue and you may like to eat, I don't know, pizza, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean that when you walk into a rehearsal and you say that you don't like a certain song or you're having trouble with it, it doesn't mean that I need to take it personally and think, oh, well, Matt doesn't like me.
Yeah.
Or Matt does A, B, and C, and I don't like the way he does those things, and it bugs me. Well, you know, we need to throw all that out the window. And I think that when we embrace the differences within our team, then we begin to, I think that forces us to change. And I think really deep down, that's really what we're running from. It's not the other person or other people that are not like us or we're not like them. I
Yeah.
think what happens is we don't want to do the hard work to change. And in essence, we just stay the same. And you can't grow a ministry that way. We have to be humble and look at how the apostles followed Jesus. The apostles didn't ask Jesus to change the way that he did things and to make everything become convenient for them. I mean, they did that in some areas, but what you see throughout the whole storyline of the Gospels is that they really just watched what Jesus did, and they just learned. And the ones who had a problem with it, that had a difficult time, soon, you know, Jesus lovingly showed them a better way, and they too realized that the angst that they had really wasn't worth it, and it was not of any eternal significance. So I think those are some of the things that we need to keep in mind when we're working with our worship teams and volunteers and staff.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So is there anything that you've done as a team leader that you, in hindsight, you look back and you think, yeah, I wish I hadn't done that?
Oh, wow. You know, there's a couple instances where one, I had offended somebody and, you know, talked about the way that maybe I was trying to give them some constructive criticism with how they could better their skill within their music. And I think that what happened was I did not really take into consideration of the way that they were feeling and thinking at the time. Yeah. And in the moment, I just said, well, if you just do A, B, and C, this can make you better. But the way that came across, it made it sound to them like they weren't good enough. Yeah. And I think that's part of the personality ditch that we find ourselves in, because, you know, I didn't mean anything that would bring that person down, but what I didn't do was really seek to understand where they were at, because at the time they were just feeling very inferior of their own abilities. Sure. And so I had to remove that from myself, because nobody thinks like me. I needed to think, and it was a female, and I had to think like her. And so when it came out and she expressed how she felt, then I had to really take a deep look within myself, because even though I didn't think of it that way, but to her, it meant something. Yeah. And that's where you have to really divide what you feel is important versus what the other person feels. What the other person feels is more imperative. So I came to the place of saying, just agreeing and say, you know what, you're right. What I said really offended you. I did not mean it that way at all, but I understand, coming from your standpoint, that really hurt you. And so that was a good way for me to resolve, because then I really got where she was coming from, and that helped those instances. And there were other times too where maybe on the opposite end, where I was so excited about doing, we were putting together in the ministry, that I empowered a person way too early. And we get good at that in ministry, right? Because we're always wanting volunteers and we're wanting people to serve. And I was so excited about a person coming on board. And I thought, okay, great. Well, they can just lead this one area. And then the pastor came to me the next week and said, did you really check this person out? Because there were some things that really didn't happen on Sunday. And I took the hit and I said, that was my fault.
Yeah.
And it put that person in a place where they were awkward, and I had to go to them as well and apologize and say, you know what, that's for no place to be for anybody. Here, let me help you with that. If it wasn't for the many men and women who were there for me at those same times where I was going through those instances where I felt the weaker one, I would not have learned and would not be learning the things that I'm doing today. So I really feel like even though we make a lot of mistakes, we have our failure, but those failures and those mistakes, when we learn from them and we learn what to do about them, that's the teacher, and that's what makes all the difference when Christ works through us to make us better leaders and volunteers.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really good. And is there anything that you've done that just worked really well, something that's been really successful in terms of growing people, growing your team, growing the depth within your team spiritually? Anything that you've done that has been really successful?
Yes.
And what was that, and how did you come about doing that, if that makes sense?
Sure. Well, it was increasing the caliber of our team, and helping them grow artistically, learning how we started new services. We started also new music genres in the church. And a lot of that, I think the number one thing that I've learned is to take your time. And so take your time with your volunteers. People who know me know that I'm very energetic and excited. Matt knows that. And I just love, just 1,000 different things going on at one time. But that doesn't always work the best.
Yeah. And
so I've learned that you have to take your time with people. You have to focus on one thing at a time. Helping, I'm just remembering singers that when they first started, man, maybe they just had oodles in front of them to learn and to get down. And they weren't a solo singer. Maybe they were a choir singer, and taking them through the ranks of developing their voice and their skill, where then years later they start leading a service by themselves. That is the goal. And I think that once we take our time, and for me, it just took week by week at rehearsal, saying, okay, we're going to spend these 10 minutes, after rehearsal with a group of other singers, and we're just going to work on one piece of music and just do one thing at a time, week by week. And then here are some exercises you can do at home. Here are some things that you can do on your own, and come back to me next week with questions, and put them in small steps of leadership. And so having the person transition from a choir to then now playing an instrument, and from being an instrumentalist, maybe now they're assistant to selecting the music and being on the programming team. And then they start to build their vocal confidence. Then they're at that point where they're able to lead a service by themselves. And that's all a process. But that, introducing drums in the church, introducing new music and new songs in the church, I think those are, in some way, some people could think that's small. No, I mean, yes, I put in thousands of dollars of video equipment and systems in the church, and you could call that a success, and that's great. But I really hang my success on the people and who God's given me, because when I can see them grow and I see them take off, then that's what ministry is. It's not about your programs. It's about them. It's about your people.
Yeah, that's really good. What are you doing at the moment? I know in Texas and so a lot of places in the States, you're getting back into the building. We aren't doing that here in the UK yet. And certainly for us, it's probably going to be a few months before we're going to get to a place where there's some semblance of a kind of a meeting. a lot more months before we can even have the normal in-person big meetings that we used to have before this. What have you been doing as a team to serve your church, first of all, in lockdown, and what have you been doing to kind of help your team and your church transition out of lockdown into whatever kind of meeting that you're experiencing at the moment?
Sure. We've taken very, very slow steps where we have done streaming throughout the whole spring until just now at this late latter portion of the spring, and even the late winter. And we've taken things by just a streaming congregation, and it was only about 2 weeks ago where we gathered back just as the worship team and the pastoral staff only, those only being the ones on campus to do stream services. And now I think this weekend we're having groups of 25 people at a time, like meeting on the lawn.
Yeah.
We'll have a big screen out there for them. Another 25 are going to be meeting in different classrooms divided up. So with 25 in this classroom, 25 here and there. And it's the pastor is very, very cautious, very very careful. We're all still wearing masks. We have sanitizing stations when we first walk in. We have a set of rules of remember to stay 6 feet away, if not 12 feet if you can.
Yeah.
We also will always have our mask on except when we sing. And when we sing, we need to be standing away from each other. Don't shake hands, don't hug, don't come in anybody's body space. We're wiping down and disinfecting all the stands, all the music, instruments, you name it.
Yeah.
And then we're just going slow. So I think it's not just about the disinfecting and cleaning, but we're on like a 3-month plan to keep doing the same thing that we're doing right now into the end of the summer. Then we'll add more people. But we're also in close watch to what the county is doing. So whatever the county is doing and the city ordinances, we're following them. Yeah. And if there's an uptick, then we'll shut something down. If numbers start to rise again, then we back off 25 people. We'll back off people in the worship team. And so I think the more that we stay down and the more that we flatten that curve, that's really what's going to eradicate the virus and make those chances less.
And so have you been doing the majority of stuff online? How has your church been engaging with that? Yeah,
it's been actually quite surprisingly wonderful. Mm-hmm. Where we have there's about 120 people at one time during the streaming. So the engagement has been really great. It's just like anybody else, you're going to have some weeks that are higher or lower numbers, but for the most part, people have been writing in their prayers. People have been commenting and interacting with our pastors. And so it's really been surprising because you would think, wow, there's so many different channels of people doing services online. Pardon me. And they have different options to choose from. Yeah. But quite the opposite, because they want your church. They want to be back. Yeah. And they want to be with their church family and to see them again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling like that way, but it's it's getting that balance right, and certainly not rushing ahead because of a sense of desperation to get back to what was before, but actually exploring what could be in this kind of new wineskin kind of season, isn't it? It's it's exciting. I just want to say a quick hello to Hilda, who's just joined us. I interviewed Hilda 2 or 3 weeks ago. She's a worship leader here in the city of Portsmouth. Had a great interview. Awesome. Don't worry, Hilda, you can catch up on YouTube. This video is going to be up on YouTube later this evening, so don't worry, you can catch up on this. You haven't missed anything, don't worry. Thanks so much, Branon. It's been so good to catch up with you and chat with you, Liz. I've got one more question that I want to throw to you, and that is, what has been the best piece of advice that someone has given you, advice or encouragement that has kind of marked you or has stayed with you over your years as a leader?
There's many, and the one that comes to mind right now is the steps. There's 3 of these: be low, go slow, don't mow. And from what I'm told, that's a tried and true phrase that has been thrown around in the music community, and treated very well with respect in the church. And so be low is to have the humble attitude, the humble mindset in any place where you walk in. Serve first, be last kind of approach. The go slow means that you do things over time. Don't be in a hurry. As I said earlier in this broadcast, I love doing 1,001 things, but like I said, it's not always the best approach.
Sure.
And so by going slow and doing one thing at a time, you can accomplish all the 1,000 things that you want to do over a long haul. That gives you a lot more fuel and the best outcome for you and your ministry. The last one, don't mow, means that you don't mow people down. It means that you don't steamroll over folks. And that kind of goes back to the first one, being low. It's learning how to go in the same wave like everybody else. Don't be quick to change things or change people. You can't change people, like I said. If things are broken, then you fix it. But you do things together as a team, and make sure that people that you aren't, I think instead of the other way of us saying, well, get them on board, I think it's more about us getting on board with them. And some may say that, that's a consensus style leadership. Well, maybe so, but I've learned that when you gain consensus and you get people's permission, then you're able to step out and give more definitive direction as you go. But again, it really is about doing things together as a team, in reflection of the way that how Jesus led his disciples.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, there's been so much good stuff this evening,
Matt.
Branon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to chat with you. I know it felt like it's been quite serious because we're talking about ministry and team leadership. I know often if we weren't doing something serious right now, we'd be in stitches. I know that. It's I always enjoy just chilling out online with you. We always have so much fun.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. And I didn't answer your first question when you said, how do we meet? Because I was thinking about that before we went on. And thanks, Hilda, by the way. Appreciate that comment.
Thank you.
I was thinking about how we met, and I mean, it was, I think, longer than 3 years, wasn't it? And we
maybe.
Did we meet? What do you remember? Because
I thought, because you do your show, you do your show, and you just bring it back in after a break. I don't know whether you reached out for people to chat to or whatever, and I'd responded and said, yeah, I'd be up for that.
Yeah, that's right. It was through Facebook. I
think probably when I brought my book out, and I was looking for opportunities to kind of.
That's right.
Here's my book. So, I think that's probably what it was. Yes. Yeah. I think that's what. Yeah. So that would have been like 4 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a while, and I remember all these early phone calls from the States to you. Yeah, it's like 5 a.m. Like, man, this is the only time Matt can talk. But hey, but I made the jump.
Really appreciate it.
I made the jump, and it's great to. I'm glad that we can come across the pond like this so quickly with all the technology that we have today. So thanks for having me, and thank you also for all your followers and friends here. And it's been an honor.
Thank you so much, Branon. And we will catch up. Just to remind everyone, this video is going to be up on YouTube later this evening. I'll download it and upload it straight away, so you'll be able to catch up. For those of you that just joined in, there's a couple of people that come in just last minute. You'll be able to watch this again on YouTube and on Facebook as well. Next week, I'm going to be speaking to Hannah Blythe, who is the worship leader at St Albans in Fulham, up in London. And I know Hannah through someone else that I met online, a vicar called Matt Hogg, who's does very similar sort of things to this, where he interviews leaders on Instagram Live and just lets them share their story and the stuff that they've learned. It's kind of really where I got the idea for doing this, to be fair. So I'm looking forward to chatting to Hannah. It's an Anglican church, but it's a fresh expression Anglican church So they're reaching out into the whole area of Fulham, which is on the kind of the west side of the thing of in London. If you know London, it's kind of like towards the left. It's where Chelsea. It's near where Chelsea play. If you follow soccer, Brandon, do you follow soccer?
Of course.
Of course you do.
I grew up playing, so yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So I'll be chatting to Hannah next week. I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Brandon, for joining me. And we'll see you back on Monday next week at 8 p.m. Thank you. See you later.